one of the reasons why we've had no serious reform of almost anything since 2000 is we have not had visionary, capable, articulate leaders who have been willing to take political risks in order to achieve sustainable reforms. And that's not the only reason,
No.
but I think it is an important part of why things like productivity have stagnated. I mean, I would say that Australia's experience of stagnating productivity is not unique. Most Western countries have experienced something, with the possible exception of the United States in the last 5 years. And so that suggests that there are common features. One of them, I think, is the aging of our population. As people get older, they get more cautious and more conservative. I think another reason is our obsession with security post 2001. If you think as a microcosm of what I mean, think of the time and money we waste taking things out of laptops and putting them back, taking our coats off and our belts and watches off in order to get on a plane because someone thinks that there is a 100% chance of something that happened once 24 years ago happening again. And we don't question it because it's dressed up as a matter of security. Or these days we say sovereignty. And while that's only a small thing, it's an illustration of how obsessed we've become about security without thinking about the costs in terms of time and money that are entailed in reducing risks that we're never told how big they are. And in other respects as well, you look at the data, it tells you that fewer people are changing jobs. Fewer people are starting up their own businesses than 25 or more years ago. More businesses are staying open that probably should have gone out of business, in part because interest rates have been very low, and in part because governments keep coming up with schemes to prop up otherwise unviable or uneconomic businesses. And so what we've done is consciously and in other ways undermine the dynamism of the economy. And that's not, as I say, unique to Australia. It's happened almost all over the developed world. And I think some of it is a byproduct of the fact that on average we're getting older and therefore more conservative and staid in our ways. And some of it is because particular forces have exploited concerns over security and exaggerated them and thrown all sorts of sand in the wheels.
So can I ask you this? I mean, that's a really good point. When I think about security, my mind also goes a little bit to regulation. Now, I know regulation is not a security issue, but
Sometimes it is.
yes, sometimes it is. But we do feel, it feels to me, and this might be wrong, so please correct me. It feels to me like we've become so regulated in so many aspects of business that regulation has become an inhibitor to productivity. Would that be a fair thing to say?
I think there's an element of that. I mean, we're not as regulated as Europe, but we're more regulated than some of our Asian neighbours and in most respects the United States, although there's a fair bit of regulation in the United States, especially at the state and local level, that maybe doesn't get as much attention. Some of the regulation that businesses experiences has been a reaction to bad behaviour by businesses who have, to use a contemporary phrase, lost their social license. That's true in financial services, in banking, where I worked for a long time as well. The kind of things that have been exposed by the Royal Commission into banking, the kind of things that have been exposed by Royal Commissions into aged care and disability care have almost inevitably produced a regulatory backlash that would have been difficult to avoid. Some of it is driven by the fact that regulators are not really required to and don't have any incentive to consider the impact of what they do on the cost of doing things. And the Productivity Commission has suggested that there ought to be more thought given to the incentives that regulators face as they do their job.